My name is Thomas J. Myrie, past president of the Lincolnite Club, Incorporated. This PowerPoint presentation was researched and prepared by the Development/Grant Committee of the Lincolnite Club at the request of the Alabama Historical Commission. The members of the Grant/Development Committee are Ms. Willa Mae Cruz, Ms. Mary Lou Essex, and myself. The Lincolnite Club, Incorporated is a 501c3 tax-exempt membership organization of the alumni and supporters of the historical Lincoln Normal School. The mission of the Lincolnite Club is to preserve, revitalize, and perpetuate the Lincoln School legacy. This PowerPoint is organized as a timeline for the Lincoln Normal School from its birth in 1867 to its demise in 1970. 103 years of educational service to African Americans, which prepared them to be citizens of the United States of America as well as citizens of the world. Lincoln Normal School of Marion, Alabama was one of the first institutions established for the education of African Americans after the Civil War. This slide shows an early classroom setting of the Lincoln Normal School. According to historical records, the origins of the Lincoln Normal School lay in the efforts of the American Missionary Association, commonly called the AMA, the Freedmen's Bureau, and the recently freed enslaved blacks following the Civil War. On July the 18th, 1867, the school was incorporated by 9 formerly enslaved men. The incorporators were James Childs, Alexander Curtis, Nicholas Dale, John Freeman, David Harris, Thomas Lee, Nathan Levert, Ivy Parrish, and Thomas Speed. They were also charter trustees for the school. After acquiring a plot of land and a small structure for the school building, the trustees had the difficulty recruiting and paying teachers. In 1868, the trustees entered into an agreement with the American Missionary Association to lease the school building and grounds for 10 years, pay for the building, upkeep, and repair, and pay the salary of teachers, and to keep the school open for at least 7 months of each year, while providing education to the largest practical number of students, especially those preparing to teach. The original curriculum included typical subjects found in a classical education, such as Greek, mathematics, history, and chemistry. In 1869, the AMA, or the American Missionary Association, the Freedmen's Bureau, and freed blacks raised $4,200. In 1870, Alabama State Legislature appropriated $486. The Congregational Church was also added to the school site. The following year, 1871, the Alabama State Legislature appropriated $1,250. In 1871, the state of Alabama approved a bill to establish 4 teachers' training schools. Marion, Alabama was selected as one of the sites. Alexander Curtis, one of the 9 incorporators and charter trustees, played a pivotal role in the establishment of the Lincoln Normal School. Alexander Curtis took the lead in establishing the institution as a normal school which provided teachers training in addition to a regular curriculum. December 1873, the AMA, American Missionary Association, deeded the school to the state with the provision that it be used as a normal college for African Americans. In 1874, the school was reorganized as the State Normal School for students, including a teachers training program, and carried on its primary education mission. In 1887, the state legislature appropriated funds to expand higher education for blacks. The Marion School was split, and the training component moved to Montgomery under the leadership of William Burns Patterson and became the Colored People's University, which evolved into the present-day Alabama State University. The state legislature passed a law forbidding establishing another normal school on the land vacated in Marion. However, a regular public school was allowed. That same year, the school buildings in Marion burned for unknown and suspicious causes. Arson was suspected by local whites who opposed the education of blacks. Financial hardships resulting from the fire, the loss of the normal school, Lincoln supporters again returned to the American Missionary Association for help. The American Missionary Association purchased the home of the former principal of the normal school for use by the school's teachers. For the next 9 years, the school's survival was very difficult. William Burns Patterson was the normal school leader in Marion from 1872 until 1887. Patterson was born in Tullibody, Scotland on February 9, 1850. He died in 1915. In 1872, Patterson was asked to be the head of the state-funded normal school and university being established in Marion, Alabama. Mr. Patterson and his wife Margaret are recognized as the founders of Alabama State Normal School for colored students, which became Alabama State University. His birthday on the 9th of February has been celebrated every year since 1901 as Alabama State University Founders Day. Mary Elizabeth Phillips was the principal of the Lincoln School from 1896 until 1927. In 1896, Talladega College teacher Mary Elizabeth Phillips was named principal of the Lincoln Normal School. Within a year, the AMA moved to close the school because of its financial difficulties. Phillips rallied the school and the surrounding town folks to raise pledges totaling $1,300, as well as an additional $100 pledge from the students. The teachers agreed to forego their salaries for a year as long as the town would supply them with food. Phillips' dedication to the school was further demonstrated in 1902 when she learned how to lay bricks and taught her students to do the same to finish a school building, the Livingston Hall, when funds ran short to pay brick masons. By the time Phillips died in 1927, the school had expanded to nearly 600 students, 26 teachers, 11 buildings serving various functions, and 40 acres of land that included a farm. 2 dormitories housed students who did not live within easy travel distance to the school. This slide shows the Phillips Memorial Auditorium. In 1939, the school dedicated its newly finished auditorium to Mary Elizabeth Phillips. The building is the centerpiece of the Lincoln Normal School historic site. It exhibits aspects of classical Greek architecture, front porch columns, arched windows, a variegated roof, and a theatrical stage. It was added to the Alabama Register of Landmarks and Heritage in 1988 and to the National Register of Historic Places in 1990. While making a study of Negroes holding Ph.D. degrees, Dr. Horace Marion Bond was struck by the fact that a disproportionate number of these persons had family roots in Perry County, Alabama. Further study of their background led Dr. Bond to conclude that the Lincoln Normal School, located in Marion, Perry County, was the decisive factor in the unusual number of Doctor of Philosophy as well as other records of high achievements on the part of Negroes who came from this predominantly rural, black, impoverished, and culturally deprived county in the very heart of Dixie. This slide shows 2 archival Lincoln School buildings. The building on the left is the Woolworth Hall. Many of the science classes were taught in this building. The building on the right is the Livingston Hall, which contained the school library, the office of the principal, and many academic classes were also taught in this building. This slide shows some additional archival Lincoln School buildings. The building on the left is one of the early buildings of the Lincoln Normal School. The date of it is unknown. The building on the right, you see 2 views. One is the Livingston Hall and the Phillips Memorial Auditorium. The untold story of the modern civil rights struggle in Marion, Alabama. During the modern civil rights struggle, Lincoln Normal School students played a vital and significant role demonstrating, marching, and attending mass meetings to gain voter rights for African Americans. Lincoln Normal School students were arrested, jailed, terrorized by the state and local authorities. The untold story of the modern civil rights struggle in Marion, Alabama, is that the historic Lincoln Normal School was closed and most of its buildings were demolished in retaliation for the participation of its students during the modern civil rights struggle. Influence and conclusion. Lincoln School greatly impacted the lives of its students, the local community, the state of Alabama, and the United States of America. Historical changes in Alabama and the United States supported by the Lincoln School can be listed as follows. Student participation in the civil rights struggle in Marion, Alabama, passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, outstanding achievements and virtue of its students, highlighting the history of the Lincoln School during the bicentennial celebration of the state of Alabama and various preservation groups. Now, the significance of the historical Lincoln School campus site is highlighted by its eligibility for addition to the National Register of Historic Places for the following criteria: its promotion of education for African Americans, its association with the modern civil rights movement, and finally, the campus archaeological potential. As of 2019, the decision is pending with the United States Department of Interior for final approval. Ode to Lincoln by the late Merlin Patton Keith. 9 brave men signed this decree, that Marion's black youth would always be free from the bonds of ignorance and poverty and strife, and have their fair share of the good life. But times were hard and funds were rare, and the state and county didn't seem to care. There were trouble and rejections on every hand, and the rich landlords would not take a stand. But finally came the blessed day when they got help from the AMA. So they erected buildings strong and tall and sent forth men to answer the call, to spread peace and justice throughout the land and expound the worth of every man, no matter what his color or creed. To kinship of man we must all give heed. Then came the day when word got around that dear old Lincoln would be closed down. After years of struggle, who could know that fate would deal such a cruel blow? Alas, our founding fathers could not sleep, and their sons and daughters began to weep. Destroy the edifice if you must, but we will never betray the trust passed on to us by sages of yore. We'll cherish that landmark evermore and tell the world about those brave men who dared to look beyond the bend. For we learned the lesson that they taught, the torch they threw to us we caught. Eager hands will hold it high, and Lincoln's spirit shall never die.
In the dark days long ago, in the smoke of battle, ere the cannon ceased roll, and the shell that rattled, in the time that triumphant soul, full of gloom and sadness, up the road I think boys and girls.